Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a fascinating spatial tour of one of the most sprawling, secretive, and architecturally stunning properties in the entire Pacific Northwest. I'm talking about the 1890 Weightman Mansion. Tucked way away in the dense forests of the Olympic Peninsula, this estate is an absolute masterclass in Victorian design, environmental adaptation, and structural engineering. We're going to map out the entire property, exploring the architecture of the main house, floor by floor, and then we'll trek across the vast grounds all the way down to the waterfront. Here is the roadmap for our tour today. First, we'll look at the secluded estate itself. Then, we'll explore the grand first floor, followed by the upper floors and quarters. After that, we'll head outside to the formal gardens and landmarks, and finally, we'll wrap up at the beachfront and floating docks.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the secluded estate. Okay, so before we even set foot inside the mansion, we have to talk about the sheer scale of this hidden fortress. Because to really appreciate the architecture, you kind of need to know the history. The estate's original construction was funded by a wealthy shipping magnate named William Leland Schumacher. He broke ground back in 1884, and this massive undertaking took 6 whole years, finally wrapping up in 1890. Fast forward nearly a century, and the property was purchased in 1984 by Anthony Weightman. Now, he initiated some massive modernized upgrades to the infrastructure, but he was incredibly careful to preserve that original 19th century Victorian soul. And the footprint of this property, it's absolutely staggering. We're talking 160 acres of dense, old-growth and second-growth forest. It is bordered by state forest, which means it is completely 100% isolated. To put that in perspective, property tax records place its valuation at $11.82 million. And well, as we know with property taxes, that definitely hints at a true market value that's likely double that number. It's a genuine hidden kingdom out there.
Actually getting to the mansion is this highly secretive, almost cinematic sensory experience. You turn off a standard country highway onto what just looks like a rugged, unmarked dirt path. You pass these very plain, deliberately unassuming no trespassing signs that look just like any standard rural driveway. Nothing to see here, right? But then, suddenly, that dirt transitions to smooth, black asphalt with freshly painted directional arrows. You follow those around a final bend through these towering Douglas firs, and boom, the house is suddenly revealed. It is a jaw-dropping, 4-story Victorian marvel clad in this forest green siding with dark brown trim, totally designed to camouflage perfectly into the surrounding woods. From there, you're directed to park under a massive covered entrance over on the east side.
Moving right along to Section 2, the grand first floor. Leaving that forested exterior behind, I want you to imagine stepping through the south doors right into the domed formal entrance. Instantly, you're greeted by these towering 12-foot glass windows. The floor beneath your feet transitions from hard stone to this lush carpeting as you step into the grand hallway, which is just an enormous corridor running the entire north to south length of the mansion. To your left is the west parlor, completely flooded with natural light from massive south-facing windows. Right in the center of the home sit the business and security offices. Toward the back, near the north elevator, is the formal dining room. And finally, taking up the entire eastern wing is the true crown jewel of the house, the grand ballroom.
Now, the grand ballroom is a perfect example of the estate's incredible local sourcing. The floors aren't just any old wood. They're this beautiful, light-colored, native broadleaf maple, harvested directly from the Olympic Peninsula itself. Towering windows frame these sweeping views of the Hood Canal to the east, while heavy Victorian draperies and these massive chandeliers hanging from the ceiling constantly remind you that you are standing in a room built in 1890, just perfectly preserved in time.
Next up is Section 3, upper floors and quarters.
So, bypassing the grand staircase for a moment, we're going to ride a fully updated, completely modern north elevator. And it's such an incredible contrast, right? Moving vertically inside the sleek metal box straight up through 135-year-old Victorian architecture. The middle layers of the mansion, the second and third floors, are highly symmetrical. Functionally, they're dedicated entirely to housing. There are exactly 10 opulent guest bedrooms, split perfectly evenly, 5 on the second floor and 5 on the third. The hallways up here basically mirror the grand corridor down on the first floor, which ensures really logical traffic flow and easy access right back to that central elevator.
When those elevator doors slide open on the top floor, you step directly into what's called the Vista Parlor. Because it sits right up under the Victorian roofline, the ceiling has these beautiful dramatic slants to it. The spatial focus of this room is aimed entirely to the west. You have massive windows providing these sweeping, totally unobstructed views of the Olympic mountain range. The floor is covered in a beige carpet featuring this elegant lily and lilac motif, and the whole room is anchored by an antique grandfather clock and corner bookcases. It creates this wonderful, quiet, scholarly atmosphere.
Right adjacent to the Vista Parlor are the master quarters, and man, the design here shifts to absolute high Victorian opulence. The walls are actually painted pink and accented with brilliant gold trim. The centerpiece of the room is a massive antique poster bed with a white lace canopy tied back to 4 intricately carved posts. Spatially speaking, this room easily commands the best light in the entire house, featuring large windows that look out to the south over the entrance and to the east right over the Hood Canal.
All right, let's head back downstairs for Section 4, Formal Gardens and Landmarks.
Stepping back outside, you're immediately greeted by a really striking sensory detail, the sound of bubbling water. This is the Poseida Pond, a highly ornate marble fish pond and fountain. In naming it after the mythical capital of Atlantis, that is just a fascinating design choice. It perfectly sets this atmosphere of mystery and aquatic history before you even walk through the front doors.
From the pond, a network of concrete sidewalks essentially spiderwebs out into the woods, leading to some really incredible microenvironments. If you wander into the deep woods, you'll actually find the Tuendo Stone, which is a culturally significant historical site to the local Native American tribes. Head to the north, right behind the mansion, and there sits a formal garden featuring a white lattice-paneled gazebo. It's perfectly nestled among these huge rose bushes specifically planted to block the coastal wind. And then, if you go down to the south, you'll find a wetland area featuring a private island lake that you access by wooden bridges. This particular feature was very likely added during those 1980s property renovations we talked about earlier.
Now, this brings us to a really crucial spatial puzzle. We've seen the Grand Ballroom. We know this house was built back in 1890 in dense, super isolated woods. So how on earth did they transport massive amounts of building materials or host hundreds of guests for ballroom parties literal decades before modern roads and highways were even paved?
Which leads us perfectly into Section 5, beachfront and floating docks.
So the answer to our question lies way down at the bottom of a bluff on the eastern edge of the property. The estate actually boasts a staggering 2,000 feet of pristine Hood Canal shoreline, and I want you to notice the strategic contrast in architecture down here by the water. You find this 1890 boathouse with upper-floor apartments, but unlike the highly ornate, intricately trimmed green mansion at the top of the hill, this beach house is sleek, plain, and completely unadorned. It is built purely for survival. Made from old-growth cedar, its smooth exterior has basically no decorative ledges. That ensures that corrosive saltwater condensation and heavy rain just wash right off it without causing any rot.
But the real marvel, the absolute game-changer here, is the dock. Extending far out into the deep water of the canal is a massive floating dock system measuring over 100 feet long. It's constructed from 8 separate floats, each roughly 16 by 25 feet. I mean, this wasn't built for a casual weekend rowboat. This massive footprint was deliberately designed to moor 100-foot sailboats and large cargo barges. This is how the mansion was built. It acted as a 19th-century maritime loading hub, where all the cargo and the guests arrived by water were loaded onto horse-drawn wagons and literally hauled up the bluff to the main house.
And the engineering here, super clever. From the shoreline, you can't even see the massive floats because they sit so low on the water, totally hidden by the upper dock structure. To reach them, you have to walk all the way out and descend this concealed ramp, outfitted with wooden safety cleats for traction during storms. Down at water level, the massive floats are secured by immense wooden pilings driven straight down into the seafloor. Today, those very same pilings double as a thriving micro-ecosystem, literally teeming with sea anemones and starfish.
So, we've traveled from that highly secretive dirt road entrance up through the Victorian grandeur of the mansion's 4 floors, through the 1980s wetlands, and all the way down to the 19th century maritime docks. But remember, this estate is 160 acres, and we've only explored a tiny fraction of the trails. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other structural marvels, historical landmarks, or architectural secrets might still be hidden deep within the uncharted woods of the elusive Weightman property? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.